Death is the one story every life shares, but the conversations around it rarely happen. Welcome to the show that opens the doors to the funeral profession. The people, the stories, and the truths most never hear. This is As the Hearse Turns.
Hey, everybody, good evening. And thank you for taking the time to join me on a Saturday night. Um, Catherine's unavailable this evening. She's got some family engagements that she is out with her family and enjoying the night. But she did want to be here, and I'm sure she might be able to pop in and out through the comments and things like that. Normally when we go live and we have shows, we talk about topics that we really love and we care about in our profession. But tonight is a situation to where I'm coming and we're going to have a discussion about a recent story that has unfolded in Chicago, Illinois, with a funeral director. And honestly, it's a conversation I wish I was not going to have, because this conversation should not be happening, because it should have been dealt with a long time ago. So tonight I'm honored to be joined by two Illinois funeral directors, Mortician Mama and Frank. I am going to butcher your last name, my friend. Is it Frank
Vasicki.
Vasicki? Okay.
Vasicki.
I'm just going to call you Frank.
There you go.
Now we are having, we are going to have our special guest, True Crime Mama. She just had some storms come through her neck of the woods and she has lost power. But as soon as she gets power back, she texts me she's going to jump in and be joining us, because I'm sure she'll have some questions that she wants to ask. Now, the big question tonight, we have is, could what would have happened at South Chicago Chapel have been prevented? Tonight is not just simply about just us discussing, a funeral service headline. It's truly about what happens when the warning signs appear, professionals such as yourself raise the concerns, and regulators and lawmakers have information right in front of them, but yet have another devastating situation eventually occur, because it's one of those, well, we don't want to react until we have to react. And I think they're at a point now to where they're going to have to answer things. You would have thought back last year there would have been some accountability, but there wasn't. So, you guys are there. You're in Chicago. You guys are intimately familiar with this case. So, you guys let me know, when were the warning signs present that something should have been done?
Years ago. Frank, I'll let you.
Well, the thing is that the place had always been questionable, just from the outside of the facility. And we're not talking about the funeral home, we're talking about the crematory.
Right.
It was very questionable. And if you see the pictures, like I have said many times, the facility, the way that it was, it didn't just happen overnight. It wasn't like it was a bad weekend, and that was like that for a long time. And it just seemed that it couldn't go unrecognized, and it did.
So speaking of the crematory, let me play this clip from last year for a lot of folks that may not be familiar with actually what transpired with the common ownership. So just to be clear, the same folks that own this crematory are the same individuals that own Southside Chapel. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So Watch this, everybody.
Information tonight on a story our investigators broke last week. Disturbing images of bodies stacked in a trailer outside a suburban crematorium.
Tonight, we are hearing from the whistleblower who took those photos. Investigative reporter Dave Savini is here tonight with us with more on what he's learned. Dave?
Joe and Erica, families from Illinois and Indiana have been contacting us every day since we broke this story, angry about the way their loved ones were handled. You'll hear from them along with the man who took the photos that have led to what is now a multi-state investigation.
Are these some of the pictures that you took?
They are.
His name is Christopher Iacchevetti. He sent these photos to our CBS News Chicago investigators, deceased people.
Now those are just like reefer trailers, from what I could tell. That's not like an actual refrigeration unit inside the crematory, correct? That's just out in the yard.
Right. It's just out in the yard. It's a trailer. And I think it was declared that it's not a reefer trailer. It was a regular trailer with a cooling unit placed upon it.
Okay.
So it wasn't even like when I was out in New York, we were using reefer trailers that were insulated, and this is what they were for. We built, specific shelving units for them, and this is not anything remotely close to that.
This is ridiculous.
Loaded into a trailer. We blurred the photos of bodies wrapped in sheets or plastic, body parts and faces exposed. This bag was full of dead bugs.
Describe for me what you see in those pictures.
Very deplorable conditions of storage. Complete disrespect and disregard for the families of these loved ones.
We conducted our own surveillance of the location where the bodies were being.
Now the hearse pulling in there. So he was also a subcontracted crematory for funeral homes that did not have a crematory. So this isn't just, these aren't decedents that he was taking care of directly because he was direct to the family or whatnot. And I don't even know if that's allowed in Illinois, if a crematory that's not a funeral home can solicit to the general public. So some of these loved ones are decedents from funeral homes other than the funeral home him and his wife own, correct?
Correct.
Stored in this trailer. This is
that's
Heights
the trailer
Crematory in Chicago Heights.
Can you open up that trailer for me? Can you open up that trailer?
Clark Morgan, who operates Heights, refused to open the trailer and also refused to answer our questions.
I'm Dave Savini from CBS. I want to show you some photos.
The photos were taken on February 15th, and 4 days later, the crematory was voluntarily shut down, pending an investigation by state regulators.
So let's talk about that. Voluntarily shut down. Why wasn't he forced to shut down? Why is it a voluntary shutdown?
So from what I understand, and I fully disclosing, I've kind of went through my better half as an attorney. He voluntarily shut down, meaning he went up and knew that they were going to the court system, and the court system was going to say, you're done. And he went right before that and said, I'm done.
So is there a breakdown in statute regulations? Now, let's just so crematories, and Frank, you're a crematory owner and you're also a funeral director, so you're from both sides of the spectrum here. The comptroller's office does not have the authority to come in there, see those conditions, and say, shut it down, we're stopping your operation, you can no longer work. You would have to go get a court order to make him cease operations?
I believe so. No, the comptroller is the one that controls the crematory.
So why didn't they shut him down? Why did he voluntarily shut down?
But if you look and you follow that, you're going to see that there were complaints to the comptroller's office that they filed, that the comptroller. Yeah, it's in the video. Okay. You'll see it in the video. And that's why they had given warning 1, warning 2. They show it, that investigators had actually gone out there to see that. And now look at that property and you tell me if you went out there and you saw that, wouldn't you say there's a little more than a problem? I mean, and
So
I just don't get it. I mean, that's
so investigators were out on that property, and there's no way all those decedents just showed up overnight. There's no possible way.
no.
And the inspectors said, okay, we're going to give you a warning, but go ahead and
Look
keep
at the-
working.
Look at the rest of the video and you'll actually see the warnings,
All right, let's
the paperwork.
Into
me
the
see
handling of the bodies here.
Should you be treating people's remains like this? There's bugs in the photos. They're in plastic. They're in sheets.
He was just treated like he wasn't even a person.
Her name is Brittany Sons, and she says her family trusted Crown Cremations in Crown Point, Indiana, to cremate her father, Danny Sons Sr. They say he was a hard-working family man, a carpenter by trade, who succumbed to cancer at the age of 61 in February. They had no idea he was transported over state lines and stored in this trailer.
What did it do to you to see those images with the trailer out back?
Just keep seeing like my dad in that trailer and just dumped like he was nothing.
To me, what that looked like, no different than if you threw my loved one in a landfill.
You felt you had to blow the whistle.
Yes, sir.
Ike Havetti is an electrician, but says a friend of his, a licensed funeral director, would on occasion ask him to help assist during removals of bodies from homes and hospitals.
You had seen something that you just couldn't unsee.
Correct. A very sad way to see the final days of where your loved one goes.
It's disgusting. It just makes you sick to the core.
Among those inside the trailer on the day the photos were taken was 81-year-old Merritt Morrow. He was a well-known dairy farmer and a Vietnam veteran.
What kind of a person was Merritt?
Everybody knows my dad for his laugh.
At his daughter's request, we showed her how her father's name was written in marker on a bedsheet.
There's writing right on that part of the sheet.
We blurred this image of her father out of respect for him and his family.
It drives you crazy.
The Morrow family feels betrayed by Crown Cremations and Heights Crematory because they trusted both businesses to handle his body with dignity and respect.
Because you don't know, and you're the one that made that choice to go through their business and then to have this happen to your dad.
They wanted to hold a celebration of life for him, but they didn't get his ashes back for 2 weeks.
I don't even know if this is my father in this urn.
You're not sure because the trust was broken. You're not sure if you really got his ashes back.
Absolutely.
You know they found 100 bodies out there?
Wow. Yeah.
Ike Havetti, a military veteran himself, also snapped the photo of this man in a suit in a plastic bag. One of the most troubling discoveries, he has been waiting to be cremated for a year.
I'll tell you from looking at him, the level of decomposition of him when I saw him, I knew he was there for a long time.
A message written on his body identifies him as Jasper Williams. The number 3 above his name is for the month of March of 2024. He was 74, and his family has now been informed.
You're dealing with people, human remains. Bye. No comment? That's it?
I look at him, I see a guy that had a wife, children, lived a good life. It just hit home to me.
Heights is only supposed to accept bodies in non-leakable containers. They must be refrigerated at 40 degrees or less. We could not hear the refrigerators running when we were there, and they have been cited in the past for storage violations. Crown Cremations was shipping their bodies there, along with numerous Chicago area funeral homes. The Indiana Attorney General is now investigating, along with the state of Illinois Comptroller Office. The families want both companies shut down for good and have contacted numerous police agencies for a criminal investigation. This is all over the place. They want justice, and they're looking for it, and they're fighting for it.
Understandably, yeah.
So the numerous violations being cited and things like that, and he was still allowed to continue to operate.
Right. Yeah. Well, then when he voluntarily shut it down is when that was closed, but the funeral home was still operating.
So, but now 2 separate businesses, correct?
Yes.
So and the comptroller's office has no control over funeral homes. Funeral homes are under Professional Regulations Board.
Mhm.
So, and I'm assuming, because we all know how government is effectively communicating with each branch and different agencies, I'm sure the comptroller's office gave information to the state board of funeral directors about the concerns or things like that to maybe be on their radar.
I, you know, the different agencies talking to each other, obviously that's probably an issue. But one of the things that I will say is that there are a lot of different names flying through there, right? There's
Now, when you say a
Joanna,
lot of different names, what are you talking about?
like the people that own that business, right? So it's not just, you can't do a search on the state's website and say, let's see what else he owns, because it's going to come up under his wife's name, one of the kids' names, other people in the family, they put different businesses and different names. So I also don't think that, it should have been a little more declared that he was the one that was running it.
Right.
So
now, what's crazy, before that crematory issue happened last year, he was already in the news.
Story about Heights Crematory, accused of mishandling people's remains. The company is suspended from operating and faces a revocation of its license pending a hearing later this month.
One of its main operators, Clark Morgan, is accused of even more violations dating back years. CBS News Chicago investigator Dave Savini broke that story and has found another business that he's tied to.
That's right, Erica and Joe. Tonight, we are looking into accusations that Clark Morgan was also operating as a funeral director without a license. One family has come forward with cell phone video where Morgan, that's him right there in the green shirt, describes himself as a funeral director to a woman complaining about his handling of her mother, Helen Mercer's body. Helen Mercer is her mother. She says her mom was in a state of decay. When she saw her at the wake, her eyelids even opened up.
What's your title?
What do you mean?
What is your title?
I'm the owner.
You the owner.
I'm the owner.
Are you a funeral director?
Yes.
It was hurtful. I couldn't stand there and look at it.
We investigated state records and found Clark Morgan has never been a funeral director. We will have our full investigation tonight at 10 p.m.
I will see you then.
Okay.
Dave, thanks.
So
there's a question, an answer to your original question. So if he's violated the code of being a licensed funeral director, and you're not a funeral director, who's gonna you could find him as a funeral director. Well, I'm not a funeral director. You know what I'm saying is it's like, okay, you got all these agencies that are supposed to be following this. What did it do? It did nothing. It did nothing. So they already know that he's not a funeral director, and that was before the crematory incident. And now a year later, you got this.
Yep. So it's like the trifecta here. It's like, so how often, from a crematory standpoint, Frank, are you visited by inspector or an investigator?
Since 2003, when I opened the crematory, three times.
So you went three times?
3 times since 2003.
Really? And then how often do you have to renew your license?
The operator's license is recommended every 5 years.
Okay.
For the operator, and for the business license, it's every year.
So they want you. So you get renewed every year, but you're not. But they have no idea what type of operation you're running. So you're 3 times. That boggles my mind. How many investigators are there for the state?
I think there's 8.
There's that many, and they.
I think there's they have multiple positions. You know what I'm saying is that's not all they do is the crematories, but they have other things that they investigate through the comptroller's office. But the thing is that we've had one surprise inspection and the other ones were announced, where they gave us notification that they were coming to do their inspection.
Right.
And like I said, I thought that was the most ridiculous thing. If you're going to do an inspection, it's supposed to be a surprise inspection. And they called and gave us about 11 months notice that they were coming out. So if there was anything going on, you had 11 months to straighten it out.
I don't understand. And we spoke yesterday about some things that have really floored me. So if my 10-year-old daughter was at the funeral home and a family comes in, and we own a Chicago or an Illinois funeral home, she can sit down, she can meet with the family, she can set a schedule, she can discuss pricing. However, the only thing she cannot do, because she is not a licensed funeral director, is sell the casket or the vault.
The merchandise. Anything that goes under the merchandise section.
So sundry items, stationery,
right?
The tchotchke items. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that is a
But the
violation.
important stuff: embalming, professional services, the use of facility, the transfer, all those types of things. She can have a conversation. And then let me ask you a question. If I wasn't in the building as the licensee, what if she picked up the phone, just putting me on speakerphone, and I asked them what kind of casket they wanted? Would that meet the requirements to be legal?
That's a very gray area. And that's up for discussion with us and our neighboring state, because both our neighboring state, Indiana, has the same issue where there are firms that are, they have arrangers and and they just click on the phone, right? There are some charges in Indiana. There's a firm that they have a 80-some-year-old licensed funeral director that is no longer capable of, physically being there. And so they come in, they meet with the families, and they use a trade embalmer, and then everything else is unlicensed people. So, that brings me to one of our House representatives is trying to pass in Illinois a House bill. I put my notes over here. I'm sorry. It's 5606, which would require the Illinois Department of Financial Professional Regulations to separate a funeral director and an embalmer's license, so that you can get they want to mimic Missouri, which you sit in a funeral home for a year and you can be a funeral director. And to be in Missouri, you can be a funeral director without being an embalmer.
Right.
For sitting in the funeral home for a year.
So you're an event planner.
Yeah.
You're not a mortician.
Right. So there are a lot of aspects of my job that are event planning. There's no way that's not a thing. But for the majority of it, when there's a body present, it's not that I know what to do. I'm not the best embalmer. I ain't Frankie. I can do it. I can call them. But the thing is I know when to reach out and to call, and I can swallow my own pride and say, hey, listen, I'm not the best for the match for this family, but Frankie is, or this person is. But we can bring in the event planners. But the biggest thing that we know is I know how to treat that body, number one. Number two, if something goes wrong, what do? I can step in with a cool, calm head and treat whatever goes wrong. So,
I mean, this just seems like a recipe for disaster.
It is 100%.
You're going to that is adding gasoline to the fire, so after the Heights issue, both of you reached out, sent letters to legislators, local lawmakers, things like that. And I'm sure they were itching at the bit that, this is something that should not happen. We need to get to work to fix this right away. So where are you guys at in that process? How many meetings have you guys had with them to discuss those things?
Go for it, Frank.
Absolutely none.
None.
I haven't even gotten responses. And like I said, I took it personal that somebody is referring to our crematory compared to that crematory. We are so far ahead. We are just,
Oh,
our policies and procedures are, in case somebody were to ask, what makes you different, or why, how do I know these are my mother's cremains? And I can sit down and carry on a conversation, an educated conversation with the family, and I can tell them why those are the cremains and how we track and how we check and how we recheck. Each cremation, it goes through 3 sets of hands before the body gets cremated. I mean, we're checking paperwork. We have a logging system that you log in on a when the remains comes in, and then it goes to another set of hands that it goes into the computer and it gets logged in. The paperwork gets printed. We have a name on the machine that goes along with the tag number, so that those cremains will never go unidentified from start to finish. And when this all happened, I took offense to it because it's like the complete opposite of what we do. And I fired a letter off to the comptroller saying that, you know what, this is a black eye to the industry and an insult to me as a
Absolutely.
professional. And when that happened, I wanted to say, and this is my thing is that I wanted to sit down with these legislators and these people of the offices that are in charge of this and say, look, it happened. What are we going to do so it doesn't happen again?
Right.
And look where we're at. We're at again. We're at again.
And we're almost a year. We're just a little over a year that this has happened. Correct?
Pretty much. With the same people involved.
Exactly. Then that have a stellar track record, as we've seen, of following the rules.
And my point was, I want to sit down with the state and say, look, here's the problem. Let's get it fixed. And say these are from a crematory operator's standpoint, a crematory owner. This is what has to be done.
Right.
To make it a positive. I mean, we could sit here all night long, and I've been watching all of these answers that we've been seeing on the Facebook and everything else. Well, why did this happen? We can do that all night long. The thing is we have to get this to the point where there's something done about it. And when you get offices, public, let's not talk about it, because then it's going to go away. And it did go away for a while. It did go away for a while, but it came back. It's like a bad boomerang here, it just came back. And now we have the same people saying, we got to do something about it. And my thing is that we have people in political offices that have the power to make the rules, the regulations, but they have to know what they're doing, what rules they're making them for, or what we have to do to make it better. And that's where the problem is.
Well, and here's the question. As a crematory operator and as a funeral director in the state of Illinois, and both of you are licensed directors, so you both have passed the law exam for the state to be able to practice. What criminal law has he actually broken?
Well,
and that's the problem. These are things that, because of everything that has happened in the past, most politicians are not proactive, they're reactive. And then they try to pass through emergency legislation that's not worth the paper that it's written on. It's like Swiss cheese with all these holes and loopholes in it. So they need to be able to make it to where it's not a fine, that there are actual criminal offenses to where you're not just going to get fined, but you're also going to face jail time, and your ass is getting locked up. There's enough of the smacking the hands. You're probably looking at most, some type of fraud to these families that didn't receive the proper remains back, or breach of contract, something along those lines. But we're talking minor offenses, and even breach of contract isn't a criminal offense. It's going to be the penalty up to whatever the amount of the contract was. Let's go back to basic mortuary law on that stuff. You look at the one that just happened over in the United Kingdom. I think that guy got 20 years. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. And 20 years is probably too lenient of a sentence, because, people trust us with their loved ones. They put an immense amount of trust in us. And all this type of crap does is make us go 6 steps backwards. And now we're going to try and keep building the trust back up. And then jackasses like this come along and knock it out. Now, Cindy, you're saying mishandling a corpse. The problem is most of those laws aren't really on the books. A lot of those laws are for grave robbing. The body would have had to be interred and then removed. So everything is going to be a little different. But most laws that come into desecration, because those laws are put into a place way back when people would go in, open the grave, steal the remains, and steal the jewelry and things like that. So the legislations today do not fit the crimes that are actually happening, and that's the problem.
Correct. I will say abuse of a corpse is there's either a class 2 felony or a class 4 felony, which is 1 to 3 years or 3 to 7 years. And, when was the last time anybody was ever convicted of that? I'm sure it was just, a jello to a tree, throw something on. But, and this there are so many layers to all of the things that went wrong. They don't follow rules. There is no other rules. And
so is that, as abuse of a corpse, is that a law actually on Illinois' statutes and regs?
Yeah, 720.
And why was he never charged? So I just saw a video from the comptroller there in Illinois saying there should be criminal charges filed, but they have no idea what to charge them with, and they never brought charges from the Heights Crematory crap a year ago. So if that's a law that's on the book, you're talking over 100 loved ones there on that property. That's over 100 counts of abuse of a corpse because they're not being stored properly.
So I don't know why, and it was a conversation that was had not with me present or involved in, is for some reason there was some conversation that it would only be for corpses that he was taking care of for another funeral home. Which I don't understand that, because there's nothing in my contract that says, oh yeah, I can let grandma sit for 6 months before I decide to do anything about it. That would be absolutely insane. I will say other states, and Chris, I think yours is one of them, is you have to refrigerate a body within like 72 hours of accepting
24.
it, right? 24? Yeah.
We have to refrigerate or embalm within 24 hours.
Yeah. And, everybody also needs to know that there's a difference between regulations and laws. So abuse of a corpse is an Illinois law. I do know of one charge that was on, and I looked it up a long time ago, and it was a funeral director that was another black eye driving through the state of Illinois with cremains in the vehicle that he was meant to be giving back to a family member. And so I don't know what it was, but he was charged with that and it was dismissed. So I don't know of any successful or realistic charges in any recent times.
Well, here's the other thing, Chris, is that about a year ago, there was a bill that was passed. It was from downstate, rural area. They had some issue with a funeral home that had bodies in the funeral home it was nothing as severe as what we have going on here in Chicago. And one of the senators from downstate, they wrote up, drafted a bill, and it flew right through. And it was this chain of custody with a ID tagging system where they want to know where that remains started, ended, and in between everything through. It flew right through. That's another letter that I wrote was to the senator that was in support of this bill. I said, before you go passing this bill, and I said it and never got a response. You really need to sit down with people that are in the industry that can help tailor this bill that works. Okay. You can't just come in and be an outsider that steps in and says, you know what, we want to know where that body's at all times, and this is going to be the new law. Ask funeral directors that do it. How can we make this better? It never happened, and it flew right through.
So they didn't do any type of stakeholders, like public hearings, testimony on the
Not at all.
bill.
No, they didn't
Not
talk
at
to a
all.
licensed funeral director at all. I'm sorry. I do believe that there was a funeral director that was involved, but they had not been a practicing funeral director for greater than 10 years. So I do apologize for that. But, you know, they have this big grand theory, and this is how this is going to work. Let's hurry up and shove it through.
Yep.
And it gets through, and oh shit, it doesn't actually work. But I bet you, I promise you. And there was a gentleman that I have so much respect for. One of the things he said is, do you want to make sure, or do you want to think about this? The violations are going to be they're going to be able to find something, because it's Swiss cheese. You know, we have to mark when somebody's in our vehicle, when somebody's at the crematory, when somebody's here, when we return them to the family. That part I actually agree with. When we return cremated remains to a family, then we have them sign. Great. Or when we take them to the cemetery, great. But there's so much room for error, right? You know, we had the power go out. And so.
I agree, Cindy.
Yeah.
So if we wrongfully embalm, now, you know, again, that's going to be more of if we embalm without permission, we're going to get sued.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get sued.
Sure.
But I don't.
That's a civil thing.
I don't foresee the sheriff coming to the door and putting me in handcuffs. It's going to be a civil situation there, and we will lose. You know, no ifs, ands, or buts.
And that was one of the things that I felt was in conversation with our state officials and our politicians. I'm looking at it from the other side of the fence. This could be a lawyer's. This was the goal. This was the end of the rainbow. This was somewhere that some attorney could come in here, and there's so many holes in these cases that you can go in and you can say, this is where the state is liable. This is where the politician that came up with this law, this is why this law is not good. This is what we have to do. We have to get together with the people that are doing the job, with the people that can make the laws, and say, this is how it's going to work together. So that incidences like this don't happen again.
So this is my friend Caitlin. She owns a funeral home out toward Pittsburgh here in Pennsylvania, Coleman Taylor Funeral Services. And her question is, does he have less liability for not being licensed or more? And I'm going to say he has less liability than those of us who are licensed and practicing. We would be held higher. We would be held at a higher level of accountability because, one, we know better.
Yes.
But two, the boards, they're going to come at us like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the question is what about his staff? Those other crematory operators, the people in the funeral home that come in and do the trade work for him and have not said anything or reported this sooner. Because the fact of the matter is he went, you know, and they're at the funeral home. From what I read today, loved ones were in closets any place they had open rooms, you couldn't turn around and there wasn't a decedent. Everywhere. And that funeral home was still operating and performing services. Because I know there were some people that were on the recent news stories saying they were having services that were supposed to be scheduled on Thursday and scheduled on Friday, and they had no idea what was going to happen with their loved ones, et cetera, et cetera. So either his wife, who is a licensed funeral director, was because her license is now suspended.
Mm-hmm.
It's not revoked.
It's
suspended, which means her license could be reactivated. Okay. So if she's doing the embalming, which I doubt she is,
she doesn't embalm.
There's probably a trade embalmer that would go to that facility and inject that body, but not saying a single word about the conditions. They are just as guilty as he is.
100%. And I have, I'm not going to name names here, but that was addressed. And I want to know why, because that person does have some issues and has had, like state record issues, not, ones that I've dreamt up, and they've done nothing. So
Brandon, he has never been a licensed funeral director, correct, guys?
He was a licensed apprentice at one point in time. I do believe he had a 33 license, correct, Frank?
Correct.
Yeah.
But he never was a licensed director.
No, and I will say this, in that family, it's a funeral directing family, right? And Frank can attest to this as well. He had no problem presenting his brother's driver's license and his brother's funeral director's license when he would go to the medical examiner's office. So yeah.
There's Catherine.
100%.
Always do the right thing, even when no one's watching.
100%. Yeah.
Well, here's the issue too, is that, you got government agencies that are involved in this now. Okay. You can go in and subpoena his records and say, who are you making checks out to or paying to do your embalming, your cremations? Obviously, if he's running a funeral home that's doing cremations, he can't be cremating at his place. What crematory is doing the cremations for him? You're going to have
is
records.
Heights completely out of business?
Yeah, that is shut down. There's another one that's going to get shut down because he has some involvement with as well.
Okay.
There are lots of crematories. There you could go to Frank's crematory and eat off the floor if you wanted to. A little weird, but you could. And then I've been in that crematory prior to, years upon years ago, and I knew there was an issue, and I said stuff at that point in time. I didn't have a reason to bark up. There wasn't bodies hanging around or anything like that. It was just, I don't think this is right. So obviously,
gut.
Yeah, and that definitely was a gut thing.
Yeah,
and then he has other crematories. There's Connie, yes, the employees are aware, but the employees are all family members, other than a few. The trade embalmer is not a family member, and
that trade embalmer should be charged. That trade embalmer should lose his or her license, and their licenses should also be suspended right now, just like the wife's license. That
100.
person should not be allowed to practice.
Yes.
And you think that would stop them? Do you think people that are like this?
No, they're just going to go work out of their cousin's funeral home, especially if they're a tight-knit family and they've got different hands and different pots. They're just going to keep going. They're going to keep going. And that's where there needs to be harsher penalties. There needs to be violations for this. There needs to be, your ass is locked up.
I will say this.
Followed through.
Mm-hmm. It's exactly it. It's got to be the follow through. There's another, crematory that's run by another member of the family, and him I would step in front of because he has scruples, but the rest.
But did that family member know what was going on at that location?
I can't honestly stand here and say that there is a way that he didn't know.
Then I wouldn't stand in front of anything for that person, because then if you know what's going on and you choose not. So we sit there and we see someone getting their butt whooped, getting beaten to a pulp, or something bad happening, and we just decide to turn around and go the other way. We
That's
are just as
horrible.
culpable.
I agree with that.
People should have been sounding these alarms. I can't understand how the volume got to where it is, over 50 some decedents.
Yes.
So now you have a little insight to that from a source that you spoke to today.
Yes.
Let's talk about that a little bit. How the volume got there. Are these loved ones, like my mom just passed away, so I call that funeral home, or what is the type of situation that he was taking these decedents into his care for?
Okay, so let's be honest here. Some of the families that he deals with are not like our families. I know where all my aunts and uncles are. I know where my mom is. I know where, everybody is. And if I get a call to help somebody in my family, they've got me, and they've got me in their corner. Some of these calls are coming from nursing homes that they are strictly on Medicaid. They haven't had a family member in years. And part of the problem, and I know Frank doesn't agree with this, but part of the problem is that racing to the bottom, $700 for a cremation, right? And they're going to, that nursing home calls them and says, I need help. I don't have a family member, but can you take them into your care? Well, the Illinois state law, so, okay, this decedent, they don't have a next of kin, right?
Right.
So after 7 days, then anyone that would step up in Cook County's rules, anyone that would step up and sign the papers is eligible to be the quote unquote next of kin. Okay. But
so
the
nobody acts within 7 days. Anybody can step forward.
Right.
But who's giving the permission for that funeral home to go and bring that person into their care before that 7 days has lapsed? Because technically the funeral home doesn't get, if a funeral home, or I'm sorry, a nursing home calls me and someone passes away and says, there's no next of kin, I legally, as a licensee, do not have the authorization or authority to go bring that person into my care.
Correct. But the nursing home is saying, hey, do me a solid and bring this person into your care. And then you're billing the Illinois Medicaid system for the $1,250 or the $24, whatever, however much that they get. I think it's $1,250. And, waiting. Well, then the nursing home is no longer willing to sign the paperwork, right? They're no longer willing to sign for a cremation. So that body is in your care. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office is not going to take it back as an abandoned body. You took it into your care, that's yours.
And then they should have never taken any of these people into their care. They should be at Cook County's medical examiner's office. And then the medical examiner decides, does the medical examiner hold contracts for indigent cases or something like that?
They do. For the ones that are in their possession, somebody that comes into the medical examiner's office under an investigation or whatever. But years ago, they used to have where you could bring in a remain, somebody that was unclaimed, somebody that had what Stacey was just talking about, somebody that was in a nursing home and had no family. Somebody was at a hospital for 5 days and they said, we have nobody. What can we do? They used to take them, but the facility actually ran out of room, and it's one of the largest facilities in the United States. I mean, the places, they had no more room. And the problem was then they came up with where the medical examiner would take the responsibility after a certain period of time. They would take the responsibility and do the cremation for that that person. They would sign the legal documentation, the cremation authorization, give the information that they had for the death certificate, still had to get a cremation permit from the medical examiner, and they would do it. And they had contracts with other crematories that, they they worked out, a pricing structure for them. But then what happened is that they said there's no way that we can financially keep doing that, taking in bodies that are unclaimed, and then having to pay for the cremation on top of it. So what they did is they stopped taking those bodies in. So one of the other issues is that you have nursing homes that don't have refrigeration. Which is that's floored me from day one. I don't know if you're going to a nursing home, chances of you coming out are not good. You know what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
your chances are you're 100 years old, you're in a nursing home. Why a nursing home doesn't have refrigeration is beyond me. It's just like, why?
Because as
And
soon as you pass away, they're no longer able to bill your insurance.
Yeah.
well,
That's all this
that's
boils down to. So my heart is telling me, and this is my speculation of this whole situation. This guy was just grabbing anybody and everybody that they were calling, because irregardless of next of kin or not, he was going to be able to bill or charge back whatever Medicaid was paying for these indigent cremations. And probably he's probably been paid for some of these 50 some individuals that were in his care and just never sent to the crematory, so he didn't have to pay the crematory.
Okay.
That's my thoughts.
Right.
And then Catherine's got a question. She wants to know if you
Sure.
have any idea what the
Yeah.
county is paying the crematory per individual, like the county pay, and how many cases per year are actually county pay.
Okay, so last year, I believe that there were 295 right about 295. As far as how much they pay, what I can tell you is when I was in Washington, D.C. during COVID, I had a conversation with Cook County because that's my home, that's my familiarity. And then when I was in the District of Columbia, we had to come up with a number that we thought was fair. And what they offered was about $350 per case for cremation. And that was equal to what Cook County was paying in 2020. So I don't know what the prices are now. It could have changed. It could still be about that, but it's pennies. It really is legitimately pennies. And then they do charge if the family does come forth afterwards and says, hey, we would like the cremains back into our own care. I believe that it's a $300 charge. I could be wrong. Do you know, Frank?
Don't know.
Okay, I just shot Susan a text, see if she'll answer me. But I believe that it's $300 that they have to pay, right around that dollar amount. So, the county is still out. But I will say with the storage things that they were talking about before, they used to hold people for 21 days, Frank, before they even addressed it, before they ever declared that they were unclaimed or any of that kind of stuff. But they
had quite a process. They did a fairly they had due diligence. I mean, they held them for a period of time, and then that was one of the things they had with the mortuary school is the unclaimed remains. They would let them come in from the school, and they'd embalm them, and then they'd be able to stay embalmed in the cooler. They were not the best condition to begin with, but they would let them embalm them and get the for their curriculum. And then what happened was they would hold them, and then how many times is it? Once a year or twice a year they used to do a indigent burial, and one of the associations worked with on a volunteer basis. They would all go out and they take to the cemetery. and they would have a priest, a rabbi, and a minister, and they would do a burial for maybe 100 bodies or whatever. But it was quite a long time that they were at the morgue. It was close to a year that they would be at the morgue. But when they kind of loosened up the reins a little bit and said, you know what, we're going to start doing the cremations, allowing there was national coverage saying that the medical examiner coroner had the right to sign that authorization if it was over a period of time. And Cook County was, I think, one of the last counties to do that, to sign cremation authorizations. But you know, it's never going to be a high end, high priced thing for the county. You know, they're going to be looking for something the least amount. You know,
Yeah.
especially I didn't know it was 295 cases, but
Yeah, 295 cases in 2024. It is $250 if they the legal next of kin can claim the remains within the first year prior to the burial. So, and
So
that fee
it's
can
just a
actually
money
be
grab at this point for this
Yeah,
person.
it is. It definitely is. I think you know, there's so many different rules that are coming up. Like Periwinkle makes a rule, and that comes down. You know, Cook County makes a rule, and then it comes down, and hey, it ties our hands just a little bit, and then it ties our hands a little tighter, and then a little bit more. But everything is all about the root of money.
So if all these issues are there, where is, you know, the state associations? Why? I'm sure there's a lobby. I'm sure there's a PAC. You know, you're paying dues into these associations. Why aren't they beating down, you know, the doors and, you know, at the state house wanting to, you know, have reform? Or do we go back to the old adage that, you know, why do we need to have more oversight? Because we're operating on the up and up to make our life more difficult.
Correct.
I think part of that is, you know, it's if it's not broke, don't change it kind of
But
situation.
it's never been
broke.
it's never been fixed.
Right.
It's always been broke.
Right. I agree. You know, Frank, you're more than welcome to, you know, opinionate as well. But you know, I'm getting a little long in the tooth in this in this industry. And in the last maybe 5 years, have I seen the Illinois Funeral Directors Association start to get a little younger. And, you know, so it's not always been the, you know, the owners that it is. So it's getting a little better, but I don't know. I don't know why they're not. We have one hell of an attorney. What?
Everything that we've talked about tonight, I've always said that if people would just look at it in a different way, I look at it in a different way. Old funeral directors, and I used to always say when I first got into the funeral business, you'd talk to an older funeral director and they'd say, well, that's not the way we used to do it. And sad part is I'm that old funeral director now. And it's like years ago, it seemed so much easier. But the thing is that a lot of funeral directors, if I do my business and nobody's bothering me, I don't want anything to do with laws or rules. I'm following the rules. I'm doing what I have to do. I don't want to hear what Springfield has to say. But I made a statement one night, and it was kind of one of those things. I've always been just a removal person. You know, I'm a trade guy. And I'm talking to an old funeral director, and I said, you know, I have a problem with one thing. I said that we as a group of funeral directors could write our own rules. And we have the support from the politicians.
Yep.
And we could do this. And he said, well, what makes you make a statement like that? I said, you know what? I'm not saying every funeral director is wealthy, but financially secure. I could honestly say from the funeral business, financially secure. They can hold their own. Second of all, every funeral director knows a politician.
Absolutely.
Every funeral director. Okay. If you take those two things and put them together, you have the most political and financial secure group of individuals that could write their own tickets to as a group. But most funeral directors can't get along with the guy down the street. How are we going to get along with the guy down in Southern Illinois? Because it doesn't pertain to them. That's the problem. And that's why I've always said, if we're going to have rules, we have to follow the rules. And
Right.
that's where my stand is with this whole thing is these rules have to be, they have to be defined and they
Yeah.
have to be put in place and followed. Or you know what? In a year, Chris, you're going to be calling me and saying, "Hey, can you get on the show? We got another one in California." And
Well, what's sad is we had Chicago, we had Heights. I was intimately involved in the Heaven Bound crematory issue over in down in like Charles County in Maryland, and literally when this all broke for Heaven Bound, there was emergency legislation that was going to get passed through, and literally I was in Annapolis for felt like weeks on end, hitting legislators' doors, having conversations with them, explaining why we can't rush this. We have to make sure it's done properly, because if we rush it, I don't know how Illinois is, but Maryland's only in session for 90 days. And then you have to wait till next session. Now, PA, they're in session all year. They take a couple breaks throughout the year, but legislation happens all year long. And finally, one senator was like, yep, you're right. And literally the legislation that was put into law this past October of last year, was so much better. It literally took all crematories. So if it was owned by a private individual, that crematory would have fallen under the Office of Cemetery Oversight. It wouldn't fall under the State Board of Morticians. And that's where the loophole was. These were unlicensed individuals owning and operating a crematory, had a funeral director that owned a funeral home next door, and they were in cahoots together and not cremating bodies. Well, next thing you know, here we are. Lid gets blown wide open. State finally gets them shut down. People on the Board of Morticians get asked to resign by the governor. And the legislation that's been put into place now takes all crematories and puts them under the Board of Funeral Directors. Cemetery oversight no longer, like the comptroller probably shouldn't have authority over the crematory, because they have no idea. That's just, the comptroller deals with money.
Right.
Crematories are final disposition.
Years ago, when that was given under that umbrella of the comptroller's job, it had to do with cemeteries.
Yeah.
And most crematories were on cemetery property.
Yeah.
And most cemeteries were accepting money for what we now call pre-need, where they're purchasing graves, headstones, whatever, in advance of the burial.
Right.
So it just, like I've always said, is that worked back then, but times have changed. That's why it has to be repositioned. It has to be. I mean, and new interpretation, new definitions to work with the way that the industry is running now, not the way it ran 50 years ago.
Right. Because the laws have changed, times have changed. Let's be honest, people are sneakier and stupider to try and do this type of crap. And the problem is the legislators now, they have to be held accountable. This should not have happened.
Correct.
I will be interested to see with those out of the 58 loved ones that are 50 some, I'm sure the number's been fluctuating over the last 2 days. But I'm interested to find out how many of them would have been Medicaid cases, and because we're talking about a different level of fraud.
Yeah,
If he's
absolutely.
doing Medicaid fraud, he's accepting funds for these indigent cremations that should have been performed a while ago, and they're not. But he's received the funds for them. That's a whole different level of stupidity on his part. I'll be curious to see how long it is before any type of charges are actually filed. But
So
these legislators, they need to be, you guys need to be emailing them every single day. And if they don't, you need to be taken to social media. You need to be calling Dave from the news place and having the conversations. Hey, we've got to hold these people accountable because this cannot continue to happen.
So I would like to share with you some breaking news that is now public. I did have kind of a heads up, and I kind of gave both of you guys a heads up earlier, but it is now on the website. They are now thoroughly investigating Bohemian National Cemetery, which is run by a board, and they have some people that are on that board that are heavily influenced by the same gentleman that we were speaking about earlier. That they were performing the cremations for other funeral homes and for under Clark's direction. The ME's office, their only statement is that they will reach out to the families once they have identified all of the bodies. The office said that they will pay for the cremation or the funerals for the families.
So the Cook County Medical Examiner is paying for the cremations.
Yes, they will.
Now,
the Illinois State Comptroller, which regulates crematoriums, is now investigating Bohemian National Cemetery and Crematorium in connection to the South Chicago Chapel scandal, and the has also been shut down.
So this is another crematory. Now, when you say they're connected, is this like a third-party crematory? Like I'm calling Frank, I need you to perform my cremations, where I don't have a stake in it. I'm just contracting with Frank. Or does he have a financial stake in this Bohemian whatever?
That is not disclosed.
Because he said he's on the board of directors.
That's not disclosed in the article, but he is involved with the board. The words that were used was he's involved with the board.
Is Bohemian National is privately owned, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, but you said he comes from a funeral director family. It could, could it possibly, who knows? But if there's connections there, so Heights closed. Bohemian was the crematory that was supposed to be performing all of his cremations, essentially.
Well, yeah. So it started at the first one, that we dealt with last year, and then he moved everything over to the one that just got closed, right? And now he was probably trying to move things over to Bohemian, but he's probably, he's just bad practices everywhere.
Was there a crematory at Southside Chapel?
No, I don't believe there was. No, not in Chicago. There's no crematory in Chicago.
Okay. So yeah, he would have to be doing things, be subcontracting or have a crematory off-site for those cases.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is it's getting
the snowball just keeps getting bigger. It just keeps getting bigger, and whatever they do, we still don't have any definitions or anything that they can hold them liable for. I mean, we can
hold them accountable.
Exactly, and so we, they can say you did this and you did this and you did this, but is it legal? Is it moral?
So in light of everything that's happened, have any of the legislators that you have reached out to previously, has there been any conversation within the last like 48 hours, 72 hours that would say that they would even be interested in coming to the table and saying that we need to fix this?
Oh, they're probably just at the point of just, reaming in their head, oh my God, what do we do? Are they going to remember that they wrote me last year? Yeah. But I mean,
Are they going to remember that I wrote them last year?
Yeah,
Probably
yeah.
not.
Probably, yeah, that's exactly true. Because, like I was saying yesterday, Chris, if I work for you, if I'm your employee and I point out, hey, this tile is broken, somebody's going to trip on it and they're going to fall and break their neck. And I repeatedly do that, right? And then somebody walks through, trips on that tile, falls, breaks their neck, and it comes down to the litigation of it. Stacy, you work there every day. Didn't you see that? Yeah, I did. And I brought it to Chris's attention.
Right.
So the fault is on Chris or on the boss. So why is it not that, hey, listen, I have brought this up to the legislation and I've told Mendoza's office, okay, somebody just fell, broke their neck. Why is it not their issue?
So at what point, besides holding the funeral director or the bad apples, because I hate referring to, because one, he wasn't a funeral director, and two, his wife is a suspended funeral director, and they haven't mentioned much about her in either one of the stories. So was she actively involved, or is she just guilty by association by having a funeral director's license?
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Right.
I mean,
because I
the
don't want to
state is-
disparage somebody, you know what I mean? But again, if you
Right.
know what's going on, you're just as guilty.
But here's the thing, the state, when they go in and they investigate this, they got 50 cases that are sitting in front of them, at least 50 cases sitting in front of them right now, where they have a death certificate, a permit, and any kind of bill of, what do you call it, a contract. So they're going to find out if the contract was signed by a funeral director, if the cremation was done by a legitimate crematory, if the body was embalmed. That's all in front of them.
Well,
so they're going to be able.
Is there a contract though if these are the indigent cases from Medicaid?
Well, they have to bill Medicaid. They have to show their goods and services.
But who from Medicaid signing the contract to have a valid contract? Or is it just, look, we just bill it and they're going to show that you perform the cremation and they pay them?
And again, we don't even know if they have a contract with them. We don't even know what
Right.
the relationship is with public aid or Medicare or whatever it may be. We don't know that. But I'm saying they have the paperwork in front of them. Now, if they come back and they say, well, we don't have that paperwork, now we got a bigger problem.
Yep.
You disposed of a remains without a death certificate, without a permit, without a authorization. And then you got the other issue is that whoever performed that, if the crematory did that without a permit, without a death certificate, now you got some big liability.
Well, not only that, as an operator myself, I managed a very, very large volume cremation business. And, we needed 3 pieces of paper before we even started that machine, because we had to have documentation. We have to have everything. Because if, Maryland Department of the Environment came in and wanted to look at our disc and all like that, they also looked at all 3 pieces of paper to make sure we were actually cremating human remains, because that's all your permit is allowed to do. You got to operate within the scope of your permit. So, I mean, your part, there's going to be multiple, that's going to be alphabet soup of agencies that are going to start looking into these things now.
Yeah. Just so anybody that's listening that's not a licensed funeral director, we have to have a completed death certificate in the state of Illinois before we can cremate. We have to have permission from the coroner's office. We pay for a permit from the Cook County Medical Examiner's office for $150. If it's outside of that county, in any other county in the state of Illinois, it's $100. So we have to have that permit, or a permit, and then the state permit as well. So we have to have everything completed before we can, go into the cremation process. It's not hey, let's cremate this guy and then get the paperwork done. There's an order to everything.
Dale asks, what are your guys' thoughts on a federal law in these areas?
So I'm licensed in multiple states, and I've traveled with disaster work, and I've been involved in quite a lot of the ones, right? I'm a real good neck. I can be there. I'm just not in the face of it, and I deal with the families. Dale, I think you nailed it on the head. I think that there are in California, let's say that in California, there's some ridiculous rules, right? But there's also some really good ones. In Illinois, we have some decent rules. Chris, I'm sure you've got rules that are like, oh, this is annoying. But there's rules in every state that's good. Do I think that we could all agree on anything for, a federal law? No, absolutely not. I'm the type of person, and Frank's the same way as I don't have a competitor, because the competitor is me yesterday. That other funeral directors think that they're, competing with the funeral home up the road or this or that or the other thing. It's just not a thing for me. So I don't understand that mentality. And that's why funeral directors sometimes, don't get along, because different things. But no, I don't. I wish that there was a federal rule,
The problem is every state is individually governed by their own rules and regulations. When we say that we have to pass a national board exam, that national board exam, we get a little certificate that says we have an entry level competency of the understanding of our profession. And then after that, then we have to, I had to perform a practical exam in my state. And then I had to sit for the state law exams to where I'm licensed. But because every state has different laws. And like we were talking earlier in the show about the laws with, how anybody can really sit down and meet with a family and do certain things. And then only a licensee has to sell merchandise or offer merchandise. That blows my mind away. That really does. But every state's completely different. And to try and do it on a national level, I think it would be, it would not be beneficial to anybody.
Correct.
I think that
here's what I've been saying for the longest time, and I never got a straight answer. Is in our state it says that you have to be a licensed funeral director to make a removal. Licensed funeral director or embalmer to make a removal. And the coroner's office or medical examiner's office says that they can designate who they want to do a removal. You could have the tow truck driver make the removal. And the reason being is because that's considered evidence. Well, in my mind, it's still a deceased person. And if
just like
you
we
were
can't
going to
consider,
have,
just like we can't consider a decedent property. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they're just mixing words at that point.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. But these are laws. These are laws that I can tell you that for everybody that you pick up, make a transfer on, it has to be by a licensed funeral director. Unless it's under investigation, then the coroner can send somebody else to do it. Okay. So my question is, wouldn't you want, on most of your coroner's cases are going to be accidents, homicide, suicide. Wouldn't you want somebody that's been trained in bloodborne pathogens, somebody that's been trained in how to maneuver remains with some dignity? But yet it's, oh no, that's not how it is. That's not how it is. Okay, well, it must be a different dead body then. If that's, you're terminating, you're given a term of a dead body to a dead body that only a funeral director can move. I don't understand that. But again, the government has made these laws that have been sitting on the books for years. And why we haven't sharpened and changed these or adapted new laws to meet with the times. And my frustration is that when you could say, well, that's a gray area, that's not a law. Yeah. If it's a gray area, that's not a law.
Laws should be black and white, and they shouldn't be open for ambiguity.
Exactly. And when you don't have, and when you have somebody that can come back and argue a point, you're going to be sitting in the same situation that Chicago's sitting in right now.
Yep.
Well, I wasn't really doing the cremation. I had somebody else doing the cremation. Well, I didn't really make all the arrangements. You're opening yourself up. And
Brandon right there says it perfectly. That's the states are devaluing a licensed person by allowing this to continue to happen.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that is well said. That
Yeah.
is well said.
My education means nothing. An event planner can do what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
By
they probably
just
make
allowing
more
it to
too.
happen. So here's the question, guys. I think knowing now that I think that our understanding that a good amount of the loved ones that were in this person's care were from indigent situations, and nursing homes, assisted living facilities contacting him because they knew that he would come running, opens up a little bit of the eyes to why there were so many, but it in no way makes this situation right whatsoever.
We have to treat the least of us like as if we're going to treat absolutely everyone. So
and I just don't understand. Hold on. So Cindy says, I don't see this tragedy as an outdated law. It's not taking each job seriously, and too many people were involved in this evil act. I don't agree. And I'll tell you why. It's this gentleman that owns the funeral home with his wife and their staff. That's who's involved. They were the ones picking up the phone and saying, yep, we're on our way. And they went out and brought these people into their care and then chose to do nothing with it. Now, I do believe the Chicago codes are completely outdated and deserve to have a complete overhaul. And if they don't, the funeral directors and the associations need to tell that you guys need to be, rioting with these lawmakers, because this is unacceptable. So it has a lot to do. The problem is the outdated law is not particularly this situation at the funeral home. The outdated laws, because they have not yet held him accountable for the other crap that this guy was doing, pretending to be a funeral director, mishandling the cremated remains and the decedents of over 100 people at the crematory. But yet he's still allowed to own a funeral home with his wife because there's no law saying he can't.
I checked the records, and it looks like they received federal funding for the ownership is just in her name. So
for the funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, two agencies not communicating.
Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous. So
he had nothing to do with the funeral home?
I'm sorry?
So he had nothing to do with the funeral home? It was his wife?
I remember when I looked up the actual address about the property, because it's a business, who owns the business and who owns the property, right? And he's on the property. The business is her. She's also received, federal funds for it being a female owned and for it being African-American owned.
Well, it's smoke and mirrors. It's playing the game. And and you know what? So Cindy does say that's how she looked at this situation, was not an outdated law. It was an oversight of not holding him responsible numerous times. So that I wholeheartedly agree with.
Yeah, I don't know if it's oversight or he had a real good friend somewhere, but yeah.
Well, the here's the thing: how often is the funeral home supposed to be investigated, Stacy, or inspected?
I don't even think that's on the books.
Yeah.
What?
I don't even think they used to do a yearly comptroller's report for preneed, but I
Yeah,
don't
they
think
still
there's
do
any
that.
law that says that they come in to check funeral.
There's
hold on.
something. If I was to build a new one, there'd be an inspection. And
Probably when you
and then there's
open.
OSHA inspections as well. So
Well, OSHA's completely separate. OSHA's a whole nother rabbit hole that has nothing to do with this one. So you're telling me that unless there's a complaint filed, the professional regulations alphabet soup agency funeral directors board never comes into your funeral homes and inspects?
Never heard of it.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is why you guys are having the problem that you have right now.
Yeah.
They used to come in, like I said, to do the inspection, the audit for the preneed. And that's another story in itself.
Right.
That's another story.
Yeah. But even when we get our annual inspection by the board. So I just had my first one here in Pennsylvania. I'm getting ready for a visitation and a viewing. It was about 2 weeks ago. Doorbell rings. I go to the door, and I've never met our inspector. I wouldn't know the man if he walked past me. Guy sitting there, and he looked like a Dodge rep, right? And I'm like, look, dude, I do not got time today. If you want to give me your card, I will chat with you later. I'm just blowing the guy off. And he goes, well, here's my card. I'm Tim. I'm the state inspector. I'm here for your inspection. I was like, oh, well, come on in.
Yeah.
And we literally walked in. He goes, okay, here's my little cheat sheet. This is everything I'm going to need. I need your 3 most recent at-need files. I need 3 recent pre-need files. I need your GPL, your casket price list, your outer burial container price list. And before we go anywhere else, show me your embalming room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got to walk in, show him my prep room, show him everything. He makes sure everything's there. My SDSs, I've got hazardous waste, everything's in place. Then we go sit down in the office. I go pull the files. I bring them down. And literally they look at the current contracts, making sure they're signed. They also look at my current GPL to make sure the prices on my GPL are matching the current prices on my contract. So they literally dig down into that stuff. So for them never to come in and inspect establishments unless there's a substantiated complaint, because it can't be a previous complaint or a known complaint for them to want to do anything. That is absurd.
Okay, so here, this is back to what I said. We have rules, we have laws that say the prep room has to do this, and your pre-need and your funds have to be this, and your general price list. But again, is it enforced unless somebody complains? So again, it's back to square one. We got laws, we got rules, but they're not enforced.
Right. So here's the actual how it's written. Funeral homes are inspected by state regulatory boards prior to opening, when the ownership or location changes, and routinely on a periodic schedule, often annually, or in response to specific consumer complaints. And then it goes into what Frank just said.
It says routinely.
It's in the quotes. That's
so
what this
routine.
Is. Yeah. They don't like me. They're going to be there annually. But Frank and I have never had to deal with that.
Guys, you got a long road ahead of you.
My up north, I think he had one inspection, but I think that was yeah.
Now you have 8 for the comptroller's office, Frank. How many investigators or inspectors for the board? for funeral directors.
See, now that when there was a complaint, it was from the licensing that comes out. So there's 5, you say? But
There's
I
7
don't
voting
even think-
members, 1 liaison. There's 5 commissioners, and the commissioners are allowed to be the inspectors.
So what you guys need to do is you need to be writing the governor's office, because not only have your legislators dropped the ball, your board has dropped the ball significantly. They should have been out there and inspecting these facilities. Because here's the thing. If this is happening here, what's happening at other places?
Yeah. So.
That just hasn't come out yet.
Well.
So we're going on about an hour and a half. So what I would like you guys to do, what can we do? What can our platform do to help you guys?
Hey, Pritzker, you listening? Yeah. That's where we need to get,
So who is this? Who is that person?
Our governor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
our governor's office. I mean, like you had said that we all know politicians.
Yeah.
I had a governor from another state that I had just worked with last year call me today. Hey, you got a problem in your state. And I'm like, yeah. And you know what? Let me use you. I'm really grateful to hear from you. And I'm grateful for our friendship. But at this point in time, this is what I need. Do you have any connections in Pritzker's office? He said he was going to try. And I had somebody shooting up my phone. So I'm assuming, that might have been a thing. But yeah, we need to get this into the politicians. And then, Frank and I both, hey, listen, all we want is better for our professions. I love my profession. Frank loves his profession. I want the best for the people, and not necessary. It's not me. It's not going to promote me. I'm not going to get anything out of this. I just want what's the best for the people. I don't want people suffering.
This is for the families that all of us serve, whether it be in Pennsylvania, whether it be Maryland, whether it be in Illinois, whatever.
Every single one. And I don't care if this is a homeless person that doesn't have a relationship with any family members, or if it's, all the way up to the president himself and has all the families and all of the money and everything like that. This is not a race thing. This is not a political thing. This is not anything other than a human thing. We need to treat humans like humans.
Well, you send me the governor's email address and we will post it to 53,000 followers on As the Hearse Turns, and we'll ask people to start emailing the governor. There's got to be more to this. This is not something that can just get brushed away. The crematory should not have been just brushed away. That's 100 people that were in those horrible conditions. Now we have over 50
that we know of.
Right. This is horrible. Mick said it, people need to flood the governor's office. So anybody that's in here, Stacy, once the live ends, go back in, and if you've got the governor's email address, I'm sure it's somewhere that we can find. It's probably just a generic staffer that gets that email anyway. But we send them all out.
Phone number.
Yeah, I'll call the governor. You don't
312.
We'll call him right. If that's his cell, I'm serious. We'll call him right now.
I don't think it's a cell. I don't think it's a cell. I think it's his office.
Yeah, Cindy,
Thanks,
please.
Cindy.
Yeah, absolutely. Send an email. We get some traction. Send emails and CC the news outlets. So Dave Savini wants to have a conversation after this, and I don't disagree with that. I think that's excellent idea. You've got to keep their feet to the fire.
And I really think the key to this whole thing is I see Stacy is passionate about her profession, and I am too. And I've worked hard at it, and I'm proud of what I do. And now I have my youngest son that is licensed and works with me, and I'd like to see him, in years to come, be as proud of what he does like I do. And I think we really have to tighten the bolts down here to make it happen for everybody. And years ago, a funeral director was a very they were put on pedestals. People thought the world of them. They were something special. And when stuff like this happens,
Yeah.
it brings us out of the circle.
It does. And we the funeral directors that have truly gotten into our profession, because it's a calling. It's not a job. It's not, it's a true calling, that we truly love doing what we do and caring for families. That is why we are here, to help others. And we have got to the good guys have got to band together, make our voice heard, and hold the bad ones accountable. So there's information there, right there, for the governor's phone number, his mailing address, and I'm sure if we Google that, there's probably a generic email address as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll work on that.
Like I say, I'd like to see some rules and some laws that actually have sticking points and consequences if not followed. And
Correct.
moving forward, I just, this is something that you don't like to see, and to see it happen for a second time, it's very discouraging. It's just wrong. And I think
is.
really, as a group, we have to come together and do this if we want to change.
The associations need to be, they need to be championing that message as well. Everybody needs to, be a united front for the change to happen. Look what had to happen in Colorado for Colorado to finally start putting things on the books. That return to nature funeral home situation, that was absolutely horrible. But you are now dealing with that situation in your own backyard. And it's hopefully this will wake up and open the eyes of these folks to actually get something taken care of for you. So we'll keep championing it. We'll keep putting information out, and as stuff comes available, we'll continue to share it. And keep things going.
That's all we can do.
So everybody, we really appreciate you for tuning in on a Saturday night. You guys hanging out with us and talking about these. So Connie, the governor's information is in the comments there from Stacy. So there it is right there. And as soon as they get an email or something, they'll put that in there as well. And I'll pin the email comment after the live is over in the comment thread. If you guys need anything that I can do, you guys know how to reach me. You have my direct cell phone number. Don't hesitate to reach out. If we've got to start, beating the drum, screaming from a louder mountain, we can do that as well. But I will see all of our followers again this coming Thursday. I am going to be sitting down and having a conversation with Dwayne Hills, the former president of Joseph Guller and Sons Funeral Home, and talking about his book and going through some fun funeral history. And I'm sure we'll talk about some older high-profile funerals, but nothing recently. But thank you guys for joining us. And again, help Frank, help Stacy. Let's make the governor tired of hearing his phone ring.
Oh yeah, I want the governor to be like, F Stacy. I never want to hear from her again. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. You guys hang tight for a second for me, okay?
Thank you.
Very good.